शृणुयाम देवाः। भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः। स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः। स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। यत्परं ब्रह्म सर्वात्मा विश्वस्यायतनं महत् सूक्ष्मात् सूक्ष्मतरं नित्यं तत्त्वमेव त्वमेव तत्। जाग्रत् स्वप्न सुषुप्त्यादि प्रपञ्चं यत् प्रकाशते तद्ब्रह्माहमिति ज्ञात्वा सर्वबन्धैः प्रमुच्यते। त्रिषु धामसु यद्भोग्यं भोक्ता भोगश्च यद्भवेत् तेभ्यो विलक्षणः साक्षी चिन्मात्रोऽहं सदाशिवः। मय्येव सकलं जातं मयि सर्वं प्रतिष्ठितम्। मयि सर्वं लयं याति तद्ब्रह्माद्वयमस्म्यहम्। अणोरणीयानहमेव तद्वन्महानहं विश्वमहं विचित्रम्। पुरातनोऽहं पुरुषोऽहमीशो हिरण्मयोऽहं शिवरूपमस्मि। अपाणिपादोऽहमचिन्त्यशक्तिः पश्याम्यचक्षुः सशृणोम्यकर्णः। अहं विजानामि विविक्तरूपो न चास्ति वेत्ता मम चित्सदाहम्। वेदैरनेकैरहमेव वेद्यो वेदान्तकृद्वेदविदेव चाहम्। न पुण्यपापे मम नास्ति नाशो न जन्म देहेन्द्रियबुद्धिरस्ति। न भूमिरापो न च वह्निरस्ति न चानिलो मेऽस्ति न चाम्बरं च। एवं विदित्वा परमात्मरूपं गुहाशयं निष्कलमद्वितीयम्। समस्तसाक्षिं सदसद्विहीनं प्रयाति शुद्धं परमात्मरूपम्। यः शतरुद्रीयमधीते सोऽग्निपूतो भवति सुरापानात् पूतो भवति ब्रह्महत्यात् पूतो भवति कृत्यात् पूतो भवति तस्मादविमुक्तमाश्रितो भवति। अत्याश्रमी सर्वदा सकृद्वा जपेत् अनेन ज्ञानमाप्नोति संसारार्णवनाशनम्। तस्मादेवं विदित्वैनं कैवल्यं फलमश्नुते कैवल्यं फलमश्नुत इति।
From this, the support of the universe arise prana, vital air, mind, all sense organs, space, air, fire, water and earth. As we discussed in the last class, this mantra essentially says that all forms of manifestation, creation, emerges from the ultimate reality. The ultimate reality has the potential of manifestation inherent in it, that manifests as the subtle world and the gross world. The subtle and the gross elements, or the subtle and the gross aspects of the elements, manifest to form this universe where there is a subject-object relationship from each and every individual's point of view. So from the absolute reality, we said that this mantra has parallel in Mundaka Upanishad. Verbatim the same mantra comes. And in explaining the theory of creation in another way, what comes there is, what emerges from Brahman, he says, is Annam. From Annam comes all these things. So Annam, which is food, which can be grossly taken as food, that which sustains everything. That which sustains life. Prana comes next, which is life, and from that everything is sustained. In that sense, it can be taken. But what it refers to from the ultimate point of view of creation is, Annam refers to the matter. Matter or Prakriti, that is the first thing that emerges, as it were. What it emerges means that is an inherent principle in it. That inherent principle manifests itself as both subtle and gross. What we experience is the Sthula Prapancham, or the gross world, gross universe. Who experiences this is the individual who is made up of the instruments which is inside him, which is Sukshma, which is subtle body. This gross body and subtle body are all made up of the elements, the 5 elements. That is why this universe is called as Prapancham. Pancham refers to these 5 elements. Prapancham refers to these absolute 5 elements which make up this universe. When they manifest by themselves in pure form, they form the equipments that are within us in the subtle body. So all this we have dealt in detail when we dealt with the aspects of this, when the concepts from Tattva Bodha were discussed. Later, when we do Atma Bodha, maybe it will come up again. Just to summarize quickly, the 5 organs of perception, which is the Pancha Indriyani, what is said here, comes from each of the sattvic aspects of each of the 5 elements. Like the Indriya of the ear comes from the space, the Indriya of the skin comes from the air, the Indriya of eye comes from fire, the Indriya of tongue comes from water, and the Indriya of the nose comes from earth. And then in the totality form, the sattvic aspect of the 5 elements constitute the subtle body, which manifest themselves as mind, intellect, ego, and the chit, which is the seat of memory, the conditioned consciousness, which is the seat of memory. So these are all the sattvic aspect of the elements which manifest. The rajasic aspect of the elements manifest as each of them again separately as each of the 5 karmendriyas. And then you have the combined form or the samashti form, which manifests as the pranas. The pranas being one, but function with reference to 5 different physiological functions. So the manifestation can be taken as pancha prana also. The 5 ways in which the pranas manifest. This is the sattvic aspect and the rajasic aspect of the elements which manifest in the subtle body, which is the instrument of experience. The gross body, which is the which is the headquarters of all experience from the individual point of view, and all the objects of experience which is there in the external world are all made up of the same elements in the grossified form. So the tamasic aspect of these 5 elements, they combine together to become impure. Impure in the sense they are not in their pure absolute state, not in their nascent state. They become secondary here. They become impure by the process called as panchikarana. By this process, they become the 5 different elements here. So each of the elements that the gross body is made up of, and each of the elements that is being experienced in the outside world by this gross body is not in their pure nature. So in other words, the space that we see has other elements also combined in it. 50% is what is the percentage given. Space is 50%. Other 50% is equally made up of the other 4 elements. Similarly, water that we see is not 100% pure water in what is in the original form. It is 50% water and the other 50% is made up of the other 4 elements. This is the process of the Panchikarana. The same way is also our gross body is made up of. So when we say, let's say blood and urine and other flowing material that are there within us, they are all aspects of water. But it is not pure water. Other things are mixed in it. Similarly, you have fire within our body, which, let's say, the digestive fire is there, the Jataragni is there. All these are aspects of fire in the body. Similarly, there are aspects of air in us, aspects of space in us, aspects of solid earth in us, the bone. These are the aspects of earth in it. So, all this, which is the spontaneous creation, simultaneously creating the individual and the world, constantly in touch with each other in relationship of experience, all of this emerges from that. So the focus is not what has come out of it, the focus is from where it has come out. Etasmat jayate, he says, from this everything has come. From this means from this what is described in the previous mantra as that which is the adharam, that which is the substratum, that which is the anandam, that which is the absolute bliss, akhanda bodham, that unbroken consciousness. From that arises all these things, and as we said, this mantra beautifully also captures the order or the sequence. It gives the subtle in that same sequence of from subtle to gross, prana, mana, indriya, and then in the gross also it gives in the same sequence as kam, vayu, jyoti, apa, prithvi, space, air, fire, water, earth. In terms of how much ever the number of sense organs contact, that also determines what is subtle and what is gross. So we said the space is the subtlest and the earth is the grossest. Also in terms of pervasiveness, also what pervades everything more is the subtlest. In that angle also, if you see, the same thing will fit in, that space, air, fire, water and earth. From this, the support of the universe arise prana, vital air, mind, all sense organs, space, air, fire, water and earth. Yes, sir.
So in the self-realized person, all the 5 elements become pure?
When you talk about self-realized person, you are still visualizing or understanding with reference to personality. With reference to the absolute unmanifest reality or Brahman. See, in the previous mantra he says, Yasmin layam yati puratrayam cha. Where everything finally goes back and gets merged. In that state, everything becomes pure. That is why we have this beautiful symbolism of this in a picture of Hindu god Mahavishnu lying in the serpent, and that serpent has 5 hoods which are pointing towards him, as it were. So what it means is, in that state where that is the state of that Ishvara being in his absolute way, where the power of manifestation, the power of Maya is there, but it is there inherent, withdrawn in him, in which time all the elements which were manifest till now has also been withdrawn. So when it is withdrawn inside, they again go back into that pure state. When they manifest outside, they come back again, and when then the gross thing, they come to that the form that we experience now. So when it goes and touches or merges back into that reality, they attain that pure state again. So this is the cycle of manifestation and unmanifestation here. As far as the self-realized person is concerned, he has merged with that unconditioned pure consciousness. For him, there is no question of this elements, there is no question of all this manifestation, unmanifestation, creation. All these things have no direct impact or connection upon him. He has just become that pure consciousness in its purest form. That's about all. There's no other features there. From his point of view, again we are saying from his point of view, he has crossed what is known as Maya. So this cycle that is happening is from our point of view because we are still caught up in this cycle. That's why it is. So therefore that Maya, which is all powerful entity, which is a power of Brahman, which has the capacity to manifest itself like this and which has the capacity to withdraw itself like this, is inherent in Brahman. So it should not be confused with the self-realized person.
Sir, I did not understand when you said that the sattvic part of the elements comes as the Gyanendriya and the Rajasic comes as the Karmendriya. Where does the Tamasic aspect come?
Gross body. That comes as the gross body. That is what the Tamasic element breaks and recombines to form the gross aspect of the Tamasic elements, the combination of which is the gross body. That is why there is no individual Tamasic air or Tamasic space, something like that, because it goes through the process of Panchikarana. So it is becoming the gross body and everything. So when you understand this gross body, any other matter that is there in the world that we experience, is it any different from this matter that we are having? It's no. So the entire gross world that we see is a manifestation of that only. So both Sthula and Sukshma is the entirety of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas in totality. And this Sattva, Rajas, Tamas is the inherent gunas in the Maya. That's all.
So when we talk about pure, we talk about when everything comes together and then get back to the pure. The pure is a combination of all the three.
Pure cannot be understood as combination, because in the pure only consciousness exists. It is there in the Maya in its inherent state. So there is no question of understanding them separately there. The separation comes only in the manifestation.
Through ignorance. Because the source is the ignorance for three.
Ignorance comes under the point of view of individual. I am talking about the entire creation itself. When it comes out, the manifestation of Maya, which is coming out as these elements, only then all this segregation of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas and purity, impurity, everything comes. From your point of view, it is called ignorance. That's all. The individual is overpowered by the Maya, therefore he is not aware of the self in its pure form. Therefore, it's called as ignorance.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So here Earth, I'm sure doesn't mean literally the planet Earth. It means the universe.
Earth means the solid aspect of what you see in the Earth. What is Mars?
So is it only the planet Earth or the entire universe?
That's what I'm saying. Mars, how would you understand it in terms of elements? Is it water? Or is it space? In space there is something.
Yeah.
All those elements which are solid in substance, in this format, that is called as Earth here. Earth, see, when you say he picked up earth, means soil, right? That means that which is the solid gross matter. So in general, I'm saying, I'm not equating to this point to point with science. That which is all in solid matter is earth. That which is all in liquid matter is water. That which is all in gaseous state is air. That which is all in energy form is fire. That which is housing all these things is the space. So there is a correspondence there. So all the aspects which are in that solid mass in a very tangible way, all that is coming under earth.
So can we say that all the non-living things are only tamasic element because having the objects of the world like stones and all these things, because they don't have prana and subtle body, so we can say that it's only a tamasic creation apart from the.
In other words, when we talk about the manifestation of the entire prapancha as the manifestation of the tamasic aspect of the five elements, therefore including this gross body, everything that is there is a manifestation of that. So obviously it is only tamas. That is why it doesn't move at all. If at all you want to bring it under gunas, it has to be tamasic. Mantra 16, we'll chant twice.
Yatparam Brahma Sarvatma Vishwasyayatanam Mahat Sukshmat Sukshmataram Nityam Tattvameva Tvameva Tat Yatparam Brahma Sarvatma Vishwasyayatanam Mahat Sukshmat Sukshmataram Nityam Tattvameva Tvameva Tat.
That which is Supreme Brahman, the Self in all, great support of the universe, subtler than the subtle, eternal, that alone thou art, that alone thou art. This mantra is not probably giving any extra information or fact from what is already covered, or it may give but in very general way. But this mantra has to be more absorbed at the level of our feeling. It gives out that staggering truth, which statements you will find only in Upanishads. In the Vedanta treatise, the last chapter is the culmination of the book, where the author wants to emphasize the ultimate truth of Vedanta, which is that thou art, Tat Tvamasi. Tat Tvamasi is considered one of the Mahavakyas. Mahavakya is like a great commandment, great statement. There are very many statements in Upanishads like that, very pithy, crisp, and all these statements are directly pointing out to Brahman and with reference to the individual's unity with Brahman. Of these, the 4 statements are considered the most important or most authentic for whatever reason, we do not know, or probably they also form the crux of each of the 4 Vedas after they are codified, maybe because of that also. Because in, let's say, Taittiriya Upanishad, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma comes. That is also a very fabulous and oft-quoted statement. It is like one of the great statements only. But these 4 statements are considered very powerful because it is talking from the point of view of the direct definition of what that Supreme Brahman or consciousness is, and then how a seeker is able to relate to it and finally reach it also, practice it and reach it. So therefore, the first statement, Prajnanam Brahma, which comes in the Aitreya Upanishad of Rig Veda, it talks about what exactly is Brahman. There is a Lakshana Vakya, it is called, because it is like a definition. Though Brahman cannot be defined, this is the closest, or this is sort of pinpointing as to what it is, that it says it is Prajnanam. It is absolute pure consciousness. Consciousness is Brahman, is the first Vakya. When you say first, the order in terms of how we can proceed. So this is coming in the Aitreya Upanishad. And second is the most famous of all, which comes in the Samaveda in Chandogya Upanishad as Tat Tvamasi. Tat Tvamasi means that thou art. So this Supreme Brahman, what it is, when this statement is asked by a student to the Guru, he is giving it as a lesson, as an advice, that what you are asking about, that essentially you are that. Tat Tvamasi. So exactly the same words is used here. Tat Tvameva Tvameva Tat. Before that he is giving Yat. Yat means that which is. He is giving some explanation and saying that is what you are. You are essentially that. Tat Tvameva. I don't know how we can bring it out, the spirit in English. And Swamiji has done a wonderful job in bringing it as close as possible in English in translation. You will find in spirit both Gita and Upanishad versus translation. It is as close as you can get, but certain things that you understand in Indian languages, it has to be felt and absorbed that only. What do you say that in Hindi? Tomeva, Tumiho, something like that. It is like that, Tomeva. Here it says that alone thou art. The conjunction is with the word Tvam here. But it cannot be done in English probably. Though he said that alone thou art. It gives that effect. It gives that spirit. So he's saying that alone is you, man. You are that alone. That spirit alone. That is you actually. That is essentially you. That is the meaning that he is trying to bring here. And then in the Atharvana Veda, in the Mandukya Upanishad, the statement Ayam Atma Brahma comes. Ayam Atma Brahma is a Abhyasa Vakya. So first we had Lakshana Vakya, then Upadesha Vakya, now Abhyasa Vakya. That means the student gets the Upadesha from the Guru and then he practices. So Ayam Atma Brahma means this Atma is Brahman. this Atma is Brahman. This is a constant Anusandhan or a repetition. Repetition is not a mechanical repetition, a constant thought flow with feeling where he is able to absorb that internally. In and through all the practices, he is able to remember this in his consciousness. So that is the practice. So the practice is what I consider myself as an individual. The essential Atma within me is the same Brahma. Atman is Brahman. This is the practice. And then finally in the Yajurveda, again a famous statement comes in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad that Aham Brahmasmi. Aham Brahmasmi means I am Brahman. I am Brahman comes out of a mouth of a realized person who is in that state of absolute consciousness. He is realized. So it is called as a Anubhava Vakya. Anubhava Vakya is a statement of experience. So these are the four statements which talk about the unity of individuality and Brahman and establishes the Brahman in totality. That statement is coming here and emphasized twice to make us understand that really you are this. So as such, as I said, this mantra has to be felt. It has to be experienced. This has to be imbibed within us with that feeling. There is, of course, there is greater things given here for contemplation, but it is a combination of that feeling that is going to give us the essence of this mantra. He says, Tattvameva, Tattvameva. That which you are seeking, that which you are understanding, that which you are asking, because essentially Ashwalayana came in the beginning to Brahma to ask about that which is the Brahma Vidya. So that culmination comes here in the end. This, in fact, this mantra ends the third topic. Topic means this topic is not in the original Upanishad like this. For easier study, Swamiji has divided that into topics so that each topic conveys a particular thought flow leading to the next topic like that. In Gita also he has done it. So in this topic finally culminates in this point that you are essentially that. Tattvameva, Tattvameva. So like that it is. So this mantra has to be experienced that way. Right. Now he says, Yat Param Brahma. That which is Supreme Brahman. That which is Supreme Brahman means Supreme Brahman is the ultimate. There is no other word beyond it. There is no other concept beyond it. There is nothing. It is, in fact, the term Brahma itself means, Brahman itself means Brihattamatvat. That which is the biggest. Biggest means what? See, when you say biggest in English, it's an adjective. How can adjective be alone? When you say biggest tower, you can say, or biggest car, biggest person. So biggest is something which will qualify something else, but this is an unqualified biggest. In fact, if you understand like this only, even the term Allahu Akbar makes sense. Allahu Akbar means God is great. I do not know the grammar, so we do not know whether it is given as the greatest or great or greater, anything like that. But they deal with God only from the transcendental point of view, which is the biggest, which is the grandest, which is the most beyond everything. Like that it is. So that meaning is understood as that means that which is far off from everything, that which is the overall, all-pervading entity which is there everywhere. That sort of a bigness which we cannot conceive. So that bigness is left for our imagination at that point, so that biggest as it were, which is the essential meaning of the root from where this word Brahman comes, is to be left as it is. It cannot be understood. It is called as Param Brahma. Yet Param Brahma, that immediately is.
So can I say the transcend?
It is transcendental. It is transcendental. But that is why it is, in our understanding, it is just not transcendental. The Supreme Brahman is not transcendental alone. It is immanent also. Immanent means that which is outer to everything, that which is beyond everything, that which encompasses everything is also within everything. So that which is within me is called as immanent. That is why the next word he says, Yat Param Brahma Sarvatma. Sarvatma is the Atma within all. Sarvatma. So the word Atma is also given. So when we use the word Atma, it is understanding that same supreme reality, consciousness, God, whatever you call, from the microcosmic point of view, the point of view only, it is still the same infinite. And when you talk about Brahman or Brahma, It is talking about the same supreme consciousness, infinite entity from the macrocosmic point of view. It is just our point of view. Remember, infinity has no microcosm or macrocosm. It is the same infinity. It is beyond all descriptions and this thing. When we use the term Atma, therefore, it is referring to that consciousness within an individual. So, yet Param Brahma, that which is, we will come back to the Sarvatma. Then he qualifies by saying that magnificence, which is the transcendental reality, which we really cannot conceive, it is all leading to what is known as an infinite factor. Infinite is beyond our intellect, therefore we cannot conceive. That infinite factor, maximum we can even try and understand, not understand the concept of infinity. We can relate to that infinity from what we experience as the time, space and causation factors in the universe. What Vedanta says is, this time, space and causation factors which constitute the universe have got that infinity quality upon them, which is correct, is nothing but the reflection or projection of the infinite Brahman which is. So, what is being projected out of Brahman, which is this universe, has gained that infinite stature because the originality is actually infinite. So, when you keep a mirror and you see the sky which is reflected inside the mirror, what is the size of the sky? You will say that sky is also infinite. Oh, here is one sky which is infinite, there is another sky which is infinite. No, there are no two infinities. Infinities cannot be two. It is only one infinity. That infinity reflects itself here. Similarly, what has come out as projection, in that the same infinity reflects its quality, and that infinity is reflected as eternity in time. Eternity means it goes forwards and backwards without any end, without any beginning, which goes as all-pervasive nature in space, without any end in any direction, that is in space, and without any end to the chain of cause and effect relationship in causality. All these three things which point out to that infinite have essentially got their infinite nature from Brahman. So that is what he has given here. We can derive that Nityam, eternal. Eternal means it is that which is there always, and that is which is, so therefore it is that which is beyond time. Sukshmat Sukshmataram. We saw in the previous mantra that there is a order that is given, and in the order of the elements, the subtlest is the space. So what is subtler than the subtle? That is this only. Finally, when you talk about creation of space, there must be also a dissolution of space. So there must be some entity into which this goes and merges. So that must be really all pervading than this. So Sukshmat Sukshmataram is subtler than the subtle, points out to the all pervasive nature of Brahman, which is greater than space. Then from the causation point of view, Vishwasyayatanam Mahat. It is the great support of the universe. Support here means what is known as the ultimate material cause. Support is not like how just this table supports the Ganesha Murti who is standing here, or the phone, or the timepiece that is here. It is to be understood in terms of how ocean supports the wave. So wave is not a burden upon the ocean like that. A very minute disturbance which is in the top, which is called as wave, is also essentially the ocean, while it is in the form of wave also, which the wave may not know, but it is still essentially the same material. So the material cause can be taken as that support. So ultimately you take the cause and effect relationship into everything, that which is beyond all the cause and effect, that which is beyond all causation, is also the same Brahman. So yet Param Brahma, which is Nityam, which is eternal, which is Sukshmat Sukshmataram, which is subtler than the subtle, which is Vishwasya Ayatanam Mahat. It's a great support, he says, Mahat Ayatanam, great support of the universe, therefore the ultimate material. Now look upon the same three from the microcosmic point of view. What is actually Nityam in us? What is actually subtler than the subtle within us? What is actually the supporter of everything in us? All that will point out to that same I. Nityam is that which is there at all points of time. So what is there at all points of time, always within us? It is I. When you go through the waking state also, you refer to as I. In the dream state also, you refer to as I. In deep sleep state also, it is I. Though there is no conversation or no reference at that point of time. When you wake up, you say, I slept peacefully. So there is a connection of I in the deep sleep state also. So that I never leaves you at any point of time. So, but what you call yourself as Gupta or somebody else X, that is not eternal. Even in our life's experience, when you go into dream, you may dream as some other person who is not Gupta. So therefore, that is no eternity. In deep sleep, somebody may call your name, you don't respond at all because you believe yourself to be nothing at that point of time. Zero. Blankness. So therefore, that is not Nityam. Any of the other things is not Nityam. But what is Nityam is that which continues in and through all these things. That is Nityam. That Nityam is nothing but our own I, which is ultimately what that I is, we'll see. But I is what we refer to that. That I is not this body, because all this body and the manifestation, even mind, everything goes away in deep sleep. So something apart from all these things is there. That is what we refer to as I. Now, Sukshmat Sukshmataram. Sukshmat Sukshmataram from macrocosmic point of view is that which is subtler than the subtle. So, when we look at the individual from the point of view of the equipments that he has, or the koshas that he is made up of, the layers that he is made up of, there are various koshas which constitutes the gross, subtle and the causal body. So the gross body is made up of food, therefore it is called food sheath. Food sheath is the outer body that we see, because it is born out of food. It is sustained by food. And ultimately it becomes food for other beings. So it is food. Everything associated with this body is food. So therefore it is called as Annamaya. This Annamaya, inside that is another kosha called as Pranamaya. That Pranamaya is subtler than Annamaya. Pranamaya is the kosha which is the connection between this food sheath and the subtle body. It is part of subtle body, but that is what it connects to the gross body. Like in the computer, the CPU, all the external chips, all those things that you see, the keyboard, the mouse, the monitor, all these things are part of the Annamaya or the gross. That's the gross expression. And then there is a subtle expression which actually makes the computer like a living being. When I say living being, understand the scope of the example. It is functional. So what is that which makes it functional is the software. It is the programs. All those programs you cannot see it in the gross form. Of course you see something written on the screen. That is not actually the program. Program is the effect of it which is functioning internally in the computer. That is the subtle body. All this becomes functional when there is a connecting battery between these two, right? That battery is the prana. That battery is the prana. So here the prana manifests itself as the physiological functions, and it is subtler because it is more pervasive and it is controlling the body. Prana functions, which are physiological functions, have a direct impact on the body. So they are more pervasive and more controlling. It is more subtler. Subtler than the prana is the mind, Manomaya. Mind is the seat of emotions. Mind pervades even beyond the body. Mind will go everywhere. It will go wherever, whatever you think of in terms of emotions. It impacts the other person also. Like that it is. That mind is controlling the prana and the gross body. The mind is pervading all these things. So it is subtler than that. And beyond mind, Vedanta says there is another sheath called Vijnanamaya. Vijnanamaya is the sheath of intellect. That intellectual sheath is the seat of your reason. It is that intellect which can control even the mind. It is a conscious thought flow. And it is more pervasive than the mind because intellect can go into unknown realms also. It can probe into reality also, which the mind by itself cannot go. Once the intellect shows the direction, then the mind can start feeling that way. So that is even more subtler. What is beyond all these things? We don't know. That is the state of Anandamaya Kosha, where all these things goes into unmanifest. Where the thought comes for the intellect also, we don't know. There is some source where it all goes into, from where it is all coming out. And that state is experienced in the causal body level as Ananda, as Sukha, as absolute peace during our deep sleep. That is Ananda. Now, beyond all these things is that supreme I, which is owning all these sheaths. So that which is subtler than the subtlest, it, according to the rule of subtlety, we say that it has to control everything, it has to pervade everything. So I pervades the deep sleep, it pervades the dream and the waking world also. It pervades all the 5 sheaths, it pervades the body, mind, intellect, everything. Therefore it is all pervasive. And because of the switch of consciousness which is always on, that all these things function. The movement of our personality from deep sleep to dream to waking, and that going up and down, manifestation and unmanifestation, also happens because of the existence of Atma, says Swami Ramtirtha. Just as presence of the sun makes everything happen in the world. What does sun do? Sun doesn't do anything, it just stays there. But the very presence of the sun, very power of the sun makes everything happen. So it is the power of the Atma which drives us from one state to the other state and back to this state, like that he says. So what is actually controlling everything? What is actually making everything happen without really directly participating in it? That is this. So you go in from microcosmic point of view, that which is Sukshmat Sukshmataram is actually the same I. And then he says, Vishwasya Ayatanam, like Adharam, that supporter. That supporter is also this I. I in the sense, each and everything in this universe, what he had given in the previous mantra also, one is bigger than the other, one is subtler than the other. So we saw that the water is subtler than the earth, the fire is subtler than water, like that the thing goes. Then what is subtler than space? Oh, really I don't know. What is subtler than space? Because maximum we can conceive of is space. That's about all. Space houses everything. What is beyond space? You say, I don't know. You are right. That don't know, that ignorance is probably that which is beyond space, your ignorance. But it doesn't stop there. Ignorance is not all powerful. When you say don't know, that don't know doesn't hang in the vacant air like that. That don't know also has the base of I. So that conscious entity is the substratum of both your knowledge and ignorance. So that which is the substratum of everything finally is that I principle only. So this I principle, which is understood from macrocosmic point of view as Nityam, as Sukshmat Sukshmataram, as Vishwasya Ayatanam, is actually essentially what he has given this mantra as Sarvatma. That is nothing but your own Atma. This is the staggering truth. I mean, this is what we really need to get into the spirit of the mantra. See, that which is all powerful, that which is beyond everything, that which is, essentially entire universe, finally he narrows it down and boils it down to say that that is actually essentially you. This is a statement probably we will not be able to comprehend, we will not be able to understand. It really doesn't matter. At least we must spend some time just, reveling in the staggering magnitude of that statement. That's all it is. That is why we always said it is a person who is at the level of a Upanishadic student who can relate to Upanishadic statements also. Right or wrong, we don't know. We have taken up the study and we are doing it. But as I said, it is not a mere intellectual understanding of this. It is not to derive all these things in the form of equation only. It is to get into that feeling of that Ashcharya, that absolute state of ecstasy, where he finally says, this Sarvatma, this is the Atma in each and every being, because all this which is there can be reached, can be contacted through the Atma within you. Go within yourself and find it out. That is the Sarvatma. And secondly, the Sarvatma Bhava is finally the sadhana also towards reaching it. Go back to mantra 10, where he is talking about where you see self in other beings and other beings in the self. There is no other way for salvation, where he says that This is called as Sarvatma Bhava. Sarvatma Bhava means the Atma that is within me is the same Atma within others also. So therefore, it helps us reduce the resistance in others. So that essentially which is within us, upon with which we can identify, that is what is going to reach us towards that Supreme Self. So he says that which is the Supreme Brahman is ultimately Sarvatma, and he ends up by saying Tat Tvameva Tvameva Tat. You are essentially that. You are essentially that. So what it means, actually the human being in the meaning, what it means to us in the present level is that our identification has been with the material equipments all along. It has been predominated by our thought flow focused on our body, mind and intellect, which forms the essential ego. And this he has given in the previous mantras, Punascha Janmantara Karma Yoga. Very many janmas before we have got this attachment and it is carrying through. But only as a human being, we have got a chance to direct our attention either to the material equipments or to the spirit. Either you can focus just only on matter, or we have a chance to focus on the spirit. When you try to focus on the spirit and you become the spiritual person, only then you reach that. So this mantra 16, which concludes the topic 3, which says realize that thou art, is making a declaration. The next topic, which is from mantra 17 to 21, these 5 mantras, it is talking about realize that thou art. Realize I am Brahman. Realize that I am Brahman. So he is giving the ways and method by which you are going to do this as a practice and establish. He has already given certain sadhana from in the first topic itself. But having given this overall knowledge as to what is this totality of Brahman, and having established that you are essentially that, now he says, practice that I am Brahman. By practicing I am Brahman, you are going to ultimately reach that state of Brahman. That which is the Supreme Brahman, the Self in all, great support of the universe, subtler than the subtle, eternal, that alone thou art. That alone thou art. We'll chant mantra 17 twice.
Jagrat swapna sushuptyadi prapancham yat prakashate tad brahmahamiti jnatva sarva bandhaih pramuchyate. Jagrat swapna sushuptyadi prapancham yat prakashate tad brahmahamiti jnatva sarva bandhaih pramuchyate.
That which illumines the world of waking, dream, deep sleep, etc., that Brahman am I. Thus realizing one is liberated from all bonds. I was going through the notes of this mantra when Swamiji was taking Kaivalya class in our cycle, when we did the course in the academy. So that was in 98 or 99, 98 and or 99 it was. So he was not really explaining this verse, but that one whole class he was explaining about only what we really lack. In other words, in this mantra, the last portion says, Sarva bandhai pramuchyate. You are liberated from all bonds. So he says, Tat Tvamasi, the statement is given. You are that supreme. But forget about that anusandhan, forget about that remembering and trying to practice or something. Just that realization, even for a few minutes, or even to understand it at the level of the intellect and sustain that thought, it just doesn't stay with us or gel with us. Meaning, we may understand it intellectually, we will connect to it when we come to a Upanishad class or when we read Upanishad or something like that. and still it is there at the level of the analysis, it is still there at the level of understanding, which is fine, which is also a part of it. But that leave everything and then standing in that standpoint, that really doesn't occur. So he said, forget even that. To even believe yourself to be not what you believe yourself to be now. To believe yourself to be not Mr. X that you believe yourself to be now. Actually, that is also too much, because our ego needs something to hold on to. And here the Upanishad is giving a very direct hit on the head. It is actually, some people say, who have sort of obviously misunderstood, they say that this saying that I am the self or you are the self, Tattvamasi, all these statements are given as it's a way of hypnotizing. But the masters actually, what they are doing is dehypnotizing. Dehypnotizing is to make a person come out of the hypnotic state. And what is that hypnotic state? Is to believe that I am this ego, I am this body, mind and intellect. Since it is very firmly rooted in us, this attachment towards this body, over many, many janmas this has come, we firmly believe this is what it is. To say that I am not this, there is a insecurity there. Meaning, if mind has nothing to get itself attached to, where will it fall on? So there is nothing else. So it is not easy. So to forget I am the self, to even imagine that I am not this person who is sitting here, I am not this person who I believe myself to be, which is represented by my name, it is too much to gather and practice. All this is because, he says, that we are not fully aware that we are bound. That is the crux. Only when a person is understanding that he is bound, will there be any attempt to free himself. A person feels himself to be absolutely free. What can be done to him at all? Even if a great avatar Purusha or a great Mahatma comes in front of him, or Upanishadic master is there trying to teach everything, what can he or anybody do? A elephant which is very young gets tied to a very small stick. With a chain they bind its leg and the stick. It really doesn't move. If at all it moves in that distance where the rope will take it. In that circumference it grazes or it does whatever it does. Now that elephant has grown. It has grown into a big animal, maybe 10 times its strength and 10 times the size it has grown. Even then they tie with that same chain and tied to that same small pole. It has strength to take away the whole tree actually, that elephant now. Now what is the small pole? But that elephant is conditioned in such a way that it will not move. That it will still graze in that same circumference, and it is bound by that same rope and in that same bamboo, and this Mahut who is taking care of it is literally he's okay because the elephant will not move. That elephant, if it believes that this is what its life is all about, where it is conditioned like that, how can it believe that the elephant is bound? Actually, it is free enough to roam around in jungles. It is free enough to go anywhere. It can pluck a coconut or banana or anywhere that is found along the way with its own majesty. It can do whatever it wants. But nothing of it does, or it dares to do, because it is bound. It is bound by that chain. And what is interesting is, it does not know that it is bound. That is the crux. The crux of the problem is that if we know that we are bound, we will immediately make all efforts to try and free ourselves, or at least that agitation or awareness will be there. But the tragedy is that we believe ourselves to be free or whatever, and this is what Swamiji has been addressing of late in many formal and informal classes as the factor of complacency that sets in. I do not know with reference to general public, but particularly with those of us who are studied under him and who are continuing in this line, taking this up as a sadhana. Not when I say not as a field of activity, as a sadhana towards moving higher in the spiritual disciplines. This complacency factor sets in. At some point of time, we feel everything is fine, okay. Okay, if there is a initial stage where there is a lack of money, it is not that again you directly work for money, but you work on some way that is taken care of. Emotional and other aspects are taken care of by family. Your intellectual curiosity is also taken care of. Now you are okay with the knowledge. You can maybe answer questions also in every form. And then that same enthusiasm or initiative with which you started the spiritual journey, which is the opening up of the fire of mumukshatva within us. Mumukshatva means that raging fire, that desire for liberation, which will not make us rest until we reach it. You know, that fire to know the self, that fire to liberate oneself. That fire seems to somewhat have subsided. The fire will never go. But what will happen is it is being submerged under various other things, and therefore we take this attitude of everything is fine, very complacent attitude. So he says that this contentment, this everything is okay, all that you set aside, you experience it, you try to understand it from the material point of view, that's all. That is a virtue only at that level. At your spiritual development level, never ever feel content, never ever feel satiated. I am using it in a positive way. Never ever feel that complacency. So he used that word mumukshatva and complacent in a totally opposite way. What is opposite of complacency is this mumukshatva only. So keeping that fire burning. Now, when will that fire burn? Is only when we deeply understand that we are actually bound. What is this bondage actually? We really use this term bondage, sarva bandhai pramuchide. One word is used in the Upanishad and that's all it is. You don't find this word anywhere else in this Upanishad, forward or backward. Sarva bandhai pramuchite, he says. That's why in Gita, Karma Yoga is given in one full chapter in 43 verses, but karma is finished in one mantra in Ishavasya. That is the style and that's the grandeur of the Upanishads. So he says, Sarva bandhai pramuchate. Bandha or bondage. In fact, Swamiji has given it in a very, not, I wouldn't say poetic, but in a rhythmic way. It's there in the commentary also, you can later read it. He says at all the levels, there are certain restrictions that we put upon ourselves that actually defines the bondage. The bondage here is a mental rope, like that for the elephant we saw a physical rope, a mental rope, that which does not make us really independent. And that which really restricts our movements, confines and constricts us, making us believe that we are this finite entity with this finite power confined to this finite area. That aspect is called as bondage. So he says, you are bound by the actions of the body, you are bound by the appetite of your senses, you are bound by the agitations of your mind, you are bound by the aspirations of your intellect at all levels. At all levels, what we see at the body, mind, intellect, every level, we are bound by our own sense perceptions. See, what is bound by sense perceptions? Once you get attached to a particular sense perception and it is what is playing in your mind, the mind, when it is tying itself with that, you really have no choice to go here or there. That thought is preoccupying you. In that sense, such a person even cannot concentrate on anything. But that person does not believe that he is bound. He doesn't know what that bondage is. Similarly, we are bound to our actions. These self-created duties upon ourselves, which is all created by us, and also not just in these obligatory duties. We also have actions which are kamyartha, which is desire-ridden activities, various activities like this. By doing these actions in a particular way, we leave the residual factor in the attainment of that fruit of action. That tendency that we leave as a residue forms the seed for the next course of action. So helplessly we are bound to this world of action. This is karma bandha. It is bondage of action. Therefore, if it is not ending in this janma, we go into next janma also. That's what he says, punascha janmantara karma yoga. Unison with this action. So action, results of action, action, results of action. This forms a bondage. So vasanas produce that action, action producing the vasanas. So there's always a stock of vasanas there. That stock of vasanas make us take new births. In that new births, we do further and further actions. So this is bondage at the action level. And Krishna says, Karyate hi avashah karma. Avashaha means helpless. Helplessly we are doing this action because the potential energy is there. What to do? You try to keep quiet in a place. It is just not possible. Something or the other, the gurgling thoughts will come and it will ultimately force you to do something. This is the bondage of action. Then not to talk about emotions and the attachments at the mental level which always create agitations. That bondage of all our stupid notions of emotions. Emotions per se is a virtue when it is directed towards the higher. The finer emotion of love is what is going to unite us with the self. All other emotions which cause this duality is further and further creating more and more weight upon us. So a person who is emotionally bound is actually like, if you take a physical example which Swamiji gives in public lectures also, that you bind yourself to this chair, you tie yourself with a rope to the chair that you are sitting. When you get up, the chair also gets up, but it's not a comfortable feeling. You have to bend yourself, or it's a weight that you are carrying. And similarly, you bind yourself to the laptop, you bind yourself to the mobile, whatever it is, you are carrying everything all the time and going how much of a physical pain. But what we don't realize is we are actually carrying all of them and going in the mind. That is what is a mental bondage. An invisible rope. We feel it's all thoughts, it's insubstantial. No, that is what is actually making our personality heavy. So this is the bondage at the emotional level. And the greatest bondage comes at the ideological level, which is very subtle, but it is very powerful. Very powerful in the sense, the attachment or the intensity of the bondage to come over is very, very hard. You will find some persons who are attached to the ideology of communism. Even afterwards, with all their reason and understand that it is not a proper ideology in accordance with the law of nature, let's assume. Even there, once the groove is there in the brain made, and when the thought flow has started flowing in that direction, however much intelligent they are and they are able to understand also, they will not be able to come out of that idea. Be it any ideology for that matter. The aspirations and the ideologies of the intellect, and not only that, even various certain great goals and other things that we have, which we also recommend, and all these goals gain value only if it is in the line of your self-realization or self-development. If it is not so, that itself becomes a samsara in this world. So aspirations of this intellect. So all these things actually make us, and what we believe, I am fully preoccupied, I have no time for this, and anyway all this, finally everything is good, there's a good bank balance, there's all the children is nice and the family is nice, and then we get into a complacency factor. Or even if it is not nice, you will say only this has to be resolved, only I have to finish this, after that everything is okay. Or only the daughter's marriage is pending, once you do this, that's okay. Or I have to just put up that factory, everything is okay after that. So we feel that this needs to be adjusted and everything is okay. All our okay factor that we are talking about is at the level of the bondage of the world only, which we don't realize. In other words, we are being either suffering or being comfortable, but we are in a very big prison. We don't realize that we are in the prison. What we see is, in this prison now I have got all facilities. I can see TV, whatever I want, whatever time. I've been given all facilities. Maybe I can stay with my family and I have a separate swimming pool. All the facilities, suppose you are given and you are enjoying and being comfortable there. But ultimately, one day when you come to know, with all these facilities also, you are bound in a very big wall. That is the time we realize that I really do not belong to here. From that day, if you realize it deeply, you will not be able to relish and enjoy whatever has been provided to you. Your only thought will be that how I will get out of this. That is the thought that will, because it is not that I am perfectly okay, everything is comfortable. I'll just end with the episode from Mahabharata. Dhritarashtra was extremely attached to the Kauravas, particularly Duryodhana. And it was of course, because of his attachment and everything only this happened. But at the end of the war, you can understand such an attached person has lost all his 100 sons. So it's in an extreme state of anger, fear, despair and sorrow, everything. In that phase only, outwardly he is showing a smile towards the Pandavas and he is asking Bhima to come so that he can embrace him. And Krishna sees the intention of Dhritarashtra. Duryodhana had already made a statue of Bhima which he was practicing his gada to hit him. So that statue was there. So Krishna pushes that statue instead of Bhima because Dhritarashtra is blind, and he gives an embrace, and that statue breaks into pieces. Such is the power of Dhritarashtra actually. And then he repents and cries, but he says, my anger had overpowered me. Then Krishna understood he has come back to his normal senses, and he says, this is not real Bhima. I knew your intentions, therefore I sent the statue of Bhima. Now you can embrace real Bhima. And then they get along very well. Then what happens is that Dhritarashtra is well taken care by the Pandavas. And after a while, after a few years, Vidura is inquiring with Dhritarashtra as to how his life is going on. Dhritarashtra is saying, everything is fine. Even more than my own sons, these Pandavas are taking care of me. In other words, I am getting food at correct intervals. They are coming and maybe doing massage to my legs, and I am feeling comfortable at all levels. Vidura says, are you not ashamed to say like this? The same persons who you tried to kill many times, they are now taking care of you, which is all fine. But at what point of time that you are going to understand and sort of think what is beyond this life? Dhritarashtra is suddenly woken up. That is the last phase of his, then the last phase of his life comes. Then only he understands, what is it I am doing? I was all the time, all my life, I was fighting for I had attachment towards the kingdom, which I didn't get because of the blindness. Pandu got it, then his sons got, then my sons also got, and the partition, everything happened. But there's attachment towards the kingdom and attachment towards the son. All this was going on, and now what I feel, everything is alright and I am feeling okay with this. Then there is a sharp hitting on the head by this Vidura's words that what are you really doing? Is this all life all about? Then what will happen? Even if after Pandavas go, probably the next generation, they will come and you will happily live like this. Is there nothing more to life? Then only he realizes. He goes to forest, in both he, Gandhari and Kunti, they all go. In renunciation they go. Meaning they take up the higher values. So this is what is meant by this complacency. Again, we can understand, but when it comes to our own life, we need to understand this. We can, we have this duty of grandson, we have the duty of building a house, we have duty this, that, everything. Actually, it's a never-ending cycle which will always keep us bound. There is never going to be a redemption. So when are we going to release ourselves? That releasing aspect can come, or the thought of it can come, only when we understand the depth of our bondage. Only when we understand that we are deep down in the gutters, then we understand I must get out and cleanse myself. If I am like a pig, comfortable in the life of the gutters, it is just like that. That's about all. So, this was what Swamiji was telling us in that class. So, Upanishad, we can have even great commentaries and we can have the meaning, but what it is trying to convey is this: that which illumines the world of waking, dream and deep sleep, that Brahman am I. Thus realizing one is liberated from the bonds. So how he is liberated from the bonds is given in the mantra. But the prerequisite for that is, we have to understand that we are bound. We'll continue in the next class. Yeah.
Regarding the complacency factor, the scriptures also say that we have a sense of gratitude towards what you have got. So if you have a sense of gratitude, like on Bhakti Marg it says that God has given so much thing and all, if you have a sense of gratitude against the provider, then it automatically points towards that complacency factor, isn't it?
In fact, examine your own statement. It is against that complacency. Correct. Against means, the moment you say, you have provided me so far, thank you. That means, you are absolutely, now the focus is shifting from what you have got to who has given this. So therefore that supreme entity who has given this, if your focus turns towards that, then you are, in other words, that infinite has provided you certain finite things. Now your focus is towards that, getting that infinity itself. So therefore the whole thing changes towards that one. So that's why I'm saying that complacency, when we use the word complacency, that contentment factor, let it be there at the material level. It is a virtue and it must be there. But at the spiritual level, you should never be complacent till you get that infinite. Because all the provision, whatever you get, is going to be only finite. But I am not satisfied till I get that infinite thing. That is the factor. Yeah.
So does guilt come in first or complacency? Because guilt again works against the strong desire that mumukshutva feeling comes on the moment you start having the guilt feeling. So that again becomes a challenge.
No. Why are you bringing in guilt here? When do you get a guilt?
Because then you start realizing all your drawback.
No. What is defined when you get that guilt? What is that feeling that you are talking about as guilt?
So when you start walking on this journey, so obviously you start realizing all your drawback, which you said several times when you clean up the gutters, comes in first.
Correct.
So that reduces your mumukshutva thing.
No, that will not reduce the mumukshatva. You cannot dwell on that more. See, the past it will come out. When you purge, all the negativities will come out. That is when we say that you need to have that objectivity. In fact, this mantra and the next mantra, he is going to clearly talk about that objectivity only. Objectivity is to keep that negativity not affecting you. So therefore, past is past, that you cannot do anything. At the same time, you have learned certain lessons, then move ahead with it. So that will not hamper the mumukshatva. In fact, when you have that feeling that my past has been like this and I am bound because of that, let me at least not do anything from now on to get myself more entangled. That will keep that mumukshatva burning even more as such. We'll conclude with the bhajans here.
पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।